Okay, the next section is on percents. And let me just zoom in right here. Let's try to do, actually I'll zoom in right here. So if we did 121, and 121. So I need you guys to remember that is means equals and of means times. So reading this problem, I know that I can say 193 equals what percent? We don't know. Times 198. Well, we know 198 times x is going to be 198x equals 193. And then from there, you can divide 193 divided by 198. So my answer would be x equals 0.9747. And because they asked for percent, we are going to move our decimal twice. So our answer would be 97.5%. Now I'm going to show you a different way, which is a fraction. Some of you might have known is over of, percent over 100. So I know that percent is going to be over 100 equals is over of. So I know that my percent in this case I don't know, so x over 100. My is 40. Of is 92. And now I have a proportion. I can cross multiply. So I'm going to have 92x equals 4,000. So 4,000 divided by 92, x would equal 43.47. And since x is already over my percent, there's no need to move the decimal. So you know in this case it's 43.5% because I rounded. And you're done. So the next section is one of the most important in Algebra 1, and it's finding the slope of a line. And that goes for Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and calculus, and so on and so forth. So finding the slope of the line. So I'm just going to write down a reminder that the slope-intercept form of a line is y equals mx plus b. And many of you probably remember this, where m is my slope and b is my y-intercept. And if the equation of a line is actually written in this format, it's very easy to identify. For example, if you take a look at number 123, you know that your slope, your m, is 3 over 2, and your b is 1. Okay, they didn't ask for b, but now you know what b is. Let's try for 125. Since m is in front of my x, my m is -4. If I really needed to know, b equals 5. Now for a problem like 126, this one's important to remember because if it says x equals 2, that's actually an undefined line. And the reason is when we graph it, here's my 2. Where will x always equal 2? Well, x will be here would be 2, 0. If I went up, I had 2, 1. If I went down, I'd have 2, -1. If I went even more down, I can have, sorry, not 5, 2, -5. And if I went more up, I'd have 2, 6 or something. So all of these points form one straight line. It's not very straight, but you get the idea. If the line were to be horizontal instead of vertical, then it would be a 0 slope. So 126 is an undefined slope, meaning there is no slope. I always think of Spider-Man. Spider-Man can walk on undefined slopes, but a human, like you and me, can only walk on a 0 slope, which is horizontal. Now, the other way in trying to determine the slope of a line, if they don't give you an equation and they give you a graph, it's important to pick 2 points. So pick 2 points. Hopefully they cross somewhere like a, so this looks like a vertice, this looks like a vertice, this looks like a vertice, but this point right here does not cross at a vertice of a box. So essentially what you want is to pick 1 or 2 points, and then you're going to read from left to right. So I'm going to choose this point, point number 1, and point number 2, and this will be point number 3. So from left to right, I know that my slope is always rise over run. And I'm going to always run to the right because I read from left to right. So my rise, it's either going to be up or down. Up if it's positive, down if it's negative, and I'm going to run to the right always. So going back to my graph from point 1, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2. So since I'm going down 3 and over 2, my slope is going to be negative 3 over 2. And let's just double check that again from my second point to my third. So 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2. Yes, it is the same slope and it is a straight line. So negative 3, 2 would be my answer. Let's try number 128. So 128, again, we're going to pick 2 points. I will choose points that actually cross at a vertice. So it looks like those there. And then I'm going to go down 2 over 1. So down 2 to the right 1. So this would be negative 2 over 1, or just negative 2 is my m. And I should write it, let's write it as m equals. So we'll say m equals negative 2. And you're done. Okay, so in this section, you're finding the slope of a line that's perpendicular to the given line. So what's important to remember, and again, you should check your notes because it explains it in there, but a parallel line has the same slope. And a perpendicular line has the opposite reciprocal. So let's try to change our line, the equation of a line, to y equals mx plus b, because it'll be a lot easier to see. So I'm going to get y alone, so I'm going to divide everything by 5. So y equals x over 5 plus 4. And the reason I wrote it that way is so that I can see that my slope is essentially in front of my x, and then this would be my y-intercept. So in this case, my slope here is 1 over 5. And we want to know the perpendicular line. So we are going to do a perpendicular line right there. Okay. If I want something to be perpendicular, it is the opposite reciprocal. So I know my perpendicular slope, and let me just, my perpendicular slope in this case would be negative 1 over 5. Because negative 1 over 5 would be the opposite reciprocal. You're just flipping it. Okay, let's try with 132. So y is not alone, so y plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. And I'm going to add 3 on the other side and subtract 4x to the other side. So y equals negative 4x, because these cancel, plus 3. Now it's a lot easier to identify that my slope, so my slope in this case is negative 4. My perpendicular slope would be the opposite reciprocal, so it'd be a positive 1 over 4. And that would be my answer. Let's try one more, and I'll give you some room so you can see. Let's try number 130. Okay, so first and foremost, we have 4 as the denominator, and we don't want the denominator because we don't like fractions. So I'm going to multiply everything by a 4. Okay, and which would give me a negative 15 equals a 12x minus 15y. And I want y by itself, so I'm going to move the 12x to the other side. So I get negative 12x minus 15 equals negative 15y. And if I divide everything by negative 15, negative 15, negative 15, negative 15, this cancels. So I get y equals 1. And then negative 12 divided by negative 15. If I were to simplify that, divided by 3, I get 4 and 5. So this would be 4 over 5. Oops, let me change my color. 4 over 5 x plus 1. And my slope is always in front of my x, so in this case my slope is 4 over 5. A perpendicular line would be negative 5 over 4. And this would be your answer. Okay, so for the next section, it says find the value of x or y so that the line through the points has the given slope. So the first thing you need to remember is that in order to find slope, the equation for slope is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And this is the formula for slope. Okay, so I'm just going to plug in what I know. So I'm going to say negative 9 equals, and then you get to choose. So you get to choose which one is your 0.1 and 0.2. So I'm going to make this 0.1, and I'm going to make this 0.2. So if I do that, then my y2 is going to be negative 4 minus my y1, which is 5, over my x2, which is x, over my x1, which is a negative 4. Now, don't forget there is a negative in my equation, okay? Don't forget. So 2 negatives make a positive. So I'm going to bring this down over here. And I get negative 9 equals negative 9 over x plus 4, okay? And you could do this different ways. I believe the easiest way would probably be a proportion. So we're going to cross multiply and get negative 9 equals negative 9x minus 36. I'm going to add 9x to both sides. So I get 9x minus 9 equals negative 36. I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So I get 9x equals negative 27, and then divide by 9, so x equals negative 3, and that is my answer. Okay, let's try one more. 138, you get m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, so I'm going to make this 0.1 and 0.2. So this would be x1, x1, y1, and x2, y2. Okay, I'm going to plug this in. So I have negative 5 over 6 equals negative 5 minus y over 10 minus a negative 14. Okay. These two negatives make a positive. So I have negative 5 over 6 equals negative 5 minus y over 24. And now it looks like a proportion, so I can cross multiply and cross multiply. So I get negative 30 minus 6y equals negative 120, I believe. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to add 30 to both sides. 30 to both sides. and I get negative 6y equals negative 90 cross. So y equals a positive 15. And I'm done. And this would be my answer. All right, moving on to the next section. You have an x and y intercept. So literally x-intercept means where it crosses the x-axis. So if the x-intercept is negative 3, then that's my x-intercept. And if the y-intercept is negative 1, then this would be my negative 1 intercept. And then I would just try to follow the pattern. So if I go down, and I wouldn't try, I would do it. I'm going down 1 and over 3. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to do that again. So you get a little kind of like an arrow, like a ladder, like stairs, and then this would be my line. So sketch the graph of each line. Okay. When you don't have a y, the x-intercept or the y-intercept, the easiest thing, I'm going to put some rules on this. So the easiest thing is number 1, to start with the y-intercept. And then you're going to plot that. And then you're going to rise over run. Remember, you're running only to the right, but you're rising up or down. And then number 4, repeat 3 times. And then number 5, draw your line. Okay, so let's start with number 141. So my y-intercept is negative 3. This is already in slope-intercept form, so it's the easiest thing. Start at negative 3 at the y-intercept. So here's my y-intercept. Then I know my slope is right here in front of my x. And it says negative 1 over 1, even though it's kind of invisible. It's like an invisible 1 in front of the x. So I know it's negative 1 over 1, so I'm going to down 1 to the right 1. So I'm going to down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1. Once you see the pattern, you can, in fact, go backwards. So up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And once you have enough points, I only need 3, but if you want to be precise and have more, by all means, do as many as you can. Okay, let's try another one. So let's say 142. My rules, again, same thing. You're going to start with my y-intercept. In this case, it's actually plus 0. So I'm going to start at 0, 0. And same idea, my slope is negative 1 over 1. So I'm going to go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. And if you really want to, you could go backwards and go up 1 to the left, up 1 to the left, up 1 to the left. Once you see the pattern and it's a linear, then a linear line or a linear equation, you can draw your line. Okay, so the next section is write the slope-intercept form of the equation of a line given the slope and y-intercept. Well, we know that y equals mx plus b, and that's my slope-intercept form of the equation of a line. So all I really need to do is just plug it in. So y equals negative 6 over 5x plus 4, and I am done. These 3 problems are fairly simple. Just plug them in where you know, and that is it. Moving on to the next section, it says write the slope-intercept form of the equation of a line through the given points. So very similar to the last one, I'm still going to start off with my slope-intercept form of a line. So I'm going to write y equals mx plus b, and I'm going to plug in what I know. So my y is negative 5, my m is negative 5 over 2, my x is 4, and we don't know our b. So in this case, I always say find Bobby, right? You're always going to look for Bobby. So if I cross cancel, I get 2 here. So I have negative 5 equals negative 10 plus b becomes a regular problem. So now you know you're going to add 10 to both sides. So 5 equals b. So there are two things you need in order to write the equation of a line. The first one is your slope, and the second one is your y-intercept. Well, we already knew what my y-intercept, or what my slope is. So what we need now is my y-intercept, which we found already, b equals 5. So the answer for number 148 is y equals negative 5 over 2x plus 5. And you are done. I'm going to do the next problem, number 150, on the left side. So changing my color to purple. And let's star 150. So, and I'll put an arrow over here. So let's say we rewrite y equals mx plus b. And I'm going to write what I know. So my y is 0. My slope is negative 3 over 10. My x is actually negative 5. And we don't know what my b is. So I am going to simplify this. So I'm going to cross cancel here. This is 1 and this is a 2. So 0 equals negative 3 over 2 plus b. I don't like fractions, so I'm going to multiply everything by the denominator. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times negative 3 over 2 is just negative 3 because the 2's cancel. And then 2 times b is 2b. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And so I get 2b equals 3. And I want b alone, so I'm going to divide by 2, divide by 2. So b equals 3 over 2. Now, I know my b, and I know my slope, which is over here. So my answer for number 150, and I'll write it in purple, is y equals negative 3 over 10x plus 3 over 2. And that would be my answer. Now there's a lot more steps in the next section because up until now you were given some of the information that you can plug in. But in the next section, you're only given 2 points. And so I'm going to do one of them. It really is the exact same thing over and over and over for the rest. So you need 2 things to write the equation of a line. You need the slope and the y-intercept. So y equals, or m is I don't know, and my b is I don't know. So I know that in order to find my m, I have y equals mx plus b, right? But my m is actually y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in this case, you could actually do 4 minus a negative 1 over 0 minus a negative 4. Or you could go the opposite way and say negative 1 minus 4 over negative 4 minus a negative, not a negative, minus 0. So in this case, you'd get 5 over 4, or you'd get negative 5 over negative 4, which is actually 5 over 4. Okay, so now that I have my m, I know that my m, so I have my m down, and that's going to be over here. So now I need to figure out my b. So I'm going to write down my slope-intercept form of a line. So y equals mx plus b. And I know my m, so I'm going to write y equals 5 over 4x plus b. Now there's a lot of variables here, so pick the point. They gave you 2 points, so pick a point that is easier for you. So in red, I think that 0, 4 is an easier coordinate. So I'm going to plug those in. So 4 equals 5 over 4 times 0 plus b. Well, 5 over 4 times 0 is actually 0. And so when I plug that in, 4 equals 0 plus b, so b equals 4. So now that I know my b and I know my slope, right? My slope is over here. So I can rewrite the equation of a line. So y equals 5 over 4x plus 4. And this would be my answer. Great, let's start with graphing inequalities. So again, you're still going to graph the inequality the same way that you would graph a y equals mx plus b equation. So I'm going to start off with enlarging number 154. And I know that my y-intercept is what I start off with. So I'm going to start at 3, and I'm going to plot that dot. And because 3 over 4 is positive, I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, over 1, 2, 3, 4. So this would be my other point. Now I need 3 points, but there's no more graph on the right side. So let me go backwards and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So this would be my point. Now, if the sign is less than or greater than, right, your line is going to be dotted. It's a dotted line. And if I have less than or greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, then my line is going to be solid. So in this case, I know it's going to be dotted. Now, we all have issues on graphing. So I want you to pay attention to this portion right here. It says y is bigger. Well, now I want you to look at the graph. My graph point, this is where it crosses, right at this point. This is where it crosses. So is my y greater than on this side of my graph? Or is my y greater than on this side of my graph? And so, again, if you still don't know, take a look at your y's. Just look at your y's. So looking at this point right here, do my y's get bigger going up or do they get bigger going down? And the answer would be going up. So since it is bigger going up, I'm going to graph this section right here. And once it is shaded, I am done. Let's do one more. So I'm going to start off with -4. So -4 is my y-intercept, so I'm going to mark that here. And I'm going to go up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because it is positive. And again, I can't keep going because the graph is a little bit smaller. So let's go backwards. If I went up and over 5, I'm going to go down and to the left 5. So now I have those points, and I can actually get rid of, I can get rid of the lines, and let's redraw that. So I start at -4, up 1 over 5, down 1 over to the right 5. Okay, so now taking a look at y is less than or greater than. So is it going to be dotted, solid, is it going to be dotted or a solid line? So in this case, it is a solid line. So we're going to connect our dots. And now we have to determine if it's shaded on top or shaded on the bottom. So this is my point that I'm looking at, okay, because that's where it crosses the y-axis. So now you got to look at these points here. Where is y less than? Is less than on this side or is it less than on that side? It is on the bottom, therefore I'm going to shade the bottom. So my bottom portion is actually shaded.